What if the people who raised you are now the ones holding you hostage through emotional guilt? What if the smiles you see today are just masks hiding silent manipulation? And what if, in your golden years, the greatest gift you can give yourself is distance? As time passes and we grow older, something profound begins to unfold within us, something subtle, yet transformative. We no longer crave applause or approval. We no longer chase noise or attention. Instead, we long for something quieter, deeper, and infinitely more valuable: peace. We start to choose calm over chaos, honesty over obligation, clarity over confusion. And with this shift comes a painful but liberating truth. The people who once felt essential to our lives may no longer be good for our spirit. That's a difficult realization, especially when those people are family. But it must be said, just because someone has been in your life for decades doesn't mean they deserve a permanent seat in your peace. Sometimes the people who knew you the longest are the ones least willing to let you grow. And as you enter your later years, you begin to see things for what they truly are. So let's talk about the first kind of person you absolutely must avoid in your older age: the guilt tripper. Guilt trippers don't always look dangerous. In fact, they rarely do. They don't yell. They don't confront. They don't demand. What they do is far more subtle and far more damaging. They sigh. They withhold. They shift the energy in a room with just a look. And suddenly you're second guessing yourself. You're wondering if you've done something wrong, when all you did was say no. That's the trap. You say, "I'm tired." They respond with, "I guess I'll figure it out on my own." You say, "I need some space." They reply, "After everything I've done for you." You try to protect your peace, and they make you feel like a monster for doing so. It's not love. It's not care. It's manipulation. But because it often comes dressed in the language of affection, it's harder to recognize and even harder to escape. And here's the cruel irony. As we age, we become more vulnerable, not just physically, but emotionally. We crave connection. We want to feel seen and valued, and guilt trippers know this. They know how to speak in ways that sound like love, but feel like pressure. They say things like, "If you really cared, you do this for me. After everything I sacrificed, you owe me this. I wouldn't be asking if I wasn't desperate." And slowly, without realizing it, you start handing over your time, your energy, your well-being, piece by piece, until one day you wake up and realize that your golden years have become a performance, a constant balancing act of trying to please people who are never truly satisfied, a life full of guilt rather than grace, obligation rather than joy. But here's what I need you to remember. Your life is not a debt. You do not owe your peace to anyone. Not your partner, not your children, not your siblings, not even your parents. Especially not if what they offer you in return is emotional manipulation. You are not alive to be drained. You are alive to live. And living doesn't mean saying yes when your body is screaming no. It doesn't mean showing up for people who never show up for you. It doesn't mean sacrificing your health, your time, or your happiness just to keep someone else from being uncomfortable. There is no love in being guilted into exhaustion. True love doesn't guilt, it gives. True love doesn't shame, it supports. True love doesn't manipulate, it honors your boundaries even when it doesn't benefit from them. You've spent your life showing up for others, being the dependable one, the strong one, the fixer, the peacemaker. But now, in this sacred chapter, it's time to show up for yourself. Not in selfishness, but in self-respect. Because guilt trippers are masterful at disguising their manipulation. They won't directly ask you to betray your needs, but they will make you feel guilty when you don't. And if you let them, they'll turn your boundaries into battlefields. That's why you must begin to notice the signs. Do you feel drained after certain conversations? Do you constantly question if you've done enough for someone? Do you find yourself explaining or justifying your every no? If so, you may be dealing with a guilt tripper. And the solution is not to fight them, but to free yourself from the game. You're not here to carry guilt. You're here to carry wisdom. And wisdom knows when to walk away. It knows that saying no is sometimes the most loving thing you can do for both of you. Because when you say no to manipulation, you say yes to truth. You say yes to clarity, to space, to breath, to a life where your value is not measured by how much of yourself you abandon. Let me tell you something plainly. You don't owe anyone access to your exhaustion. You don't owe them the parts of you that are barely holding on. You don't owe them the energy you no longer have. Especially when they use love as a bargaining chip. Especially when they reduce your presence to how much you can do for them. And if this sounds harsh to some, that's okay. Truth often sounds harsh when you've been raised to confuse loyalty with self-neglect. But here's what's even harsher. Living your final years full of silent resentment, waking up every day and dreading the phone call, feeling heavy before a visit, wondering if you're wrong for wanting space, second-guessing every moment of solitude as selfishness. That is not the life you deserve. You deserve ease. You deserve quiet mornings that aren't clouded by emotional pressure. You deserve connections that uplift you, not ones that drain you. So if someone in your life constantly makes you feel like you're not enough unless you're sacrificing yourself, take a step back. Because real love, authentic, mature, soulful love, doesn't make you earn it. It doesn't turn affection into currency. It doesn't turn connection into control. It simply loves, fully, freely, without fear. And if you're wondering, what will happen if I stop answering their guilt? Let me tell you, you will heal. You'll reclaim your voice. You'll remember your worth. You'll discover a version of yourself that doesn't live under emotional blackmail. And yes, some people may be upset. Some may call you selfish, but let them. Because they're not angry that you've changed. They're angry that their manipulation no longer works. You are allowed to grow. You are allowed to protect your space. You are allowed to stop explaining your boundaries to people who were never going to respect them anyway. You've spent your life earning peace. Now it's time to claim it. Through every sleepless night, through every silent sacrifice, through every moment you bit your tongue to keep the peace, you have already paid the price. Now, peace is your inheritance. Do not trade it for guilt. And if someone truly loves you, they won't ask you to. They'll say rest, heal, breathe. They'll say take your time. They'll say I see you, not just what you can do for me. Because love that demands your exhaustion isn't love, it's control. So be mindful of the guilt trippers. They won't always be loud. They'll often come with smiles and sweet words. But if your soul feels heavier after they leave, trust that. That is your spirit recognizing emotional theft. And if you ever doubt whether it's okay to say no, let this be your reminder. Saying no to them is saying yes to you. And that is a trade worth making. Every single time. Now that you've seen how guilt can disguise itself as care, let's turn to another kind of emotional weight. One that doesn't manipulate, but drains. One that doesn't guilt, but complains. Constantly, loudly, relentlessly. Let's talk about the energy vampires and how to protect your peace from them next. Let's move a little deeper now. This part isn't just philosophical, it's personal. It hits the heart. Because sooner or later, we all run into people like this. The kind who only come around when their world is falling apart. Not when you're in pain. Not to ask how you are. Not to celebrate your joy or walk beside you in stillness. They show up when they need something. These are the users, the opportunists, the people who treat your love like a convenience store, open when they need fuel, closed when they're satisfied. And I want to make one thing very clear before we go further. This isn't about being unwilling to help. It's not about withholding kindness. It's about recognizing when kindness has been taken for granted, when giving has become one-sided, when you've become someone's emotional supply instead of a human being with needs of your own. Maybe you've seen it before. Maybe you've lived it for years. A relative who never calls until they need a loan. A friend who only appears when they've run out of options. A grown child who vanishes for months only to return with a problem they expect you to fix. And of course, they'll come with urgency, with need, with a story that makes your heart ache because you care. You always have. And that's what makes this type of dynamic so painful, because you're someone who remembers who people were. You remember the laughs, the connection, the moments that made them matter. You want to believe they're still that person deep down. So you give, you pour, you stay open. But with time, life teaches you something sobering. Some people only return to the places that feed them. They don't come to love you. They come to use you. They don't show up to build with you. They show up to take. And once their cup is full again, they disappear, leaving you drained and wondering if you were ever valued beyond your usefulness. And here's the harsh truth no one likes to admit. Being needed is not the same as being loved. Let me repeat that, slowly, clearly, deeply. Being needed is not the same as being loved. Some people don't keep you in their lives because they cherish you. They keep you because you're convenient, because you're soft, because you don't say no, because they know you'll answer when they call, listen when they vent, give when they ask, even when you're running on empty. And over time, you begin to feel it. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's subtle, a heaviness, a feeling of being unseen, a quiet inner voice whispering, this doesn't feel right. And yet, you ignore it because you're loyal, because you were raised to show up, because you're not the kind of person who turns away from someone in need. But here's the danger. When you constantly give to people who never give back, you become hollow. You start running on reserves, and they don't even notice because they're not here for your well-being. They're here for your resources, not just your money, your time, your patience, your energy, your presence, your light. And when they're done, they leave. No thank you, no check-in, no how have you been? Just silence. Cold, empty silence that says, I got what I needed. And that silence, it's loud. It teaches you things if you're willing to listen. It teaches you that one-sided love is not love, it's dependency. It teaches you that you deserve more than to be someone's backup plan. It teaches you that your worth isn't found in what you give, but in who you are. Still, the hardest part isn't recognizing this dynamic. It's letting go of it. It's accepting that someone you held, helped, sacrificed for was never really there for you. That they loved your generosity, but not your soul. That they loved the way you showed up, but never showed up for you. And when you finally say no, when you finally draw a line, they call you selfish. But it's not selfish to protect your peace. It's survival. It's wisdom. It's finally learning that your well-being matters too. So if they only come around when they want something, let them go. If they only remember you when they're desperate, release them. If your phone only rings when they need a favor, ask yourself why they don't call when it's your birthday, when you're grieving, or when you're simply in need of companionship. And don't be afraid of their reaction when you say, not this time, because it's in that moment, the moment you stop being available, that you'll see who they really are. They might twist the story. They might accuse you. They might say you've changed, but you have. You've changed because you've grown tired of being drained. You've changed because you've realized that giving without receiving is not love, it's imbalance. You've changed because you know now the right people will never put you in that position to begin with. In this season of life, you need mutuality, reciprocity, connection. You don't need more guilt. You don't need more silent withdrawals from your emotional bank. You need people who check on you just because, who show up not to take, but to simply be present. You need people who ask, how's your heart? Not, can I borrow something? And if that sounds rare, it is. But that's what makes it sacred. And you are worthy of sacred connection. Now let's talk about another type of person who can be even harder to detect, because they often come cloaked in love, care, and even concern. They're not users in the traditional sense. They don't just want what you can give. They want control. These are the controllers. And they often don't even know they're doing it. They'll say, I'm just looking out for you. They'll say, I'm trying to help. They'll say, I know what's best for you. But what they really mean is, I want you to do it my way. And that can be suffocating. Because in this stage of life, the last thing you need is to feel like a child again in your own story. Controllers come in different forms. Some are obvious. They're loud, opinionated, forceful. They try to manage your every move, tell you how to live, what to say, what to think. But others, they're quiet, subtle. They disguise their control as protection. They second-guess your choices. They offer friendly advice you didn't ask for. They pressure you in ways that sound kind, but feel condescending. You say you want to travel, and they warn you about danger. You say you're thinking about giving something away, and they tell you it's a bad idea. You express a dream, and they raise an eyebrow. It's constant doubt disguised as care. But here's the truth. You are not here to be managed. You are here to be respected. You've lived, You've endured losses, you've navigated heartbreaks, you've raised children, built a home, carried burdens in silence, made impossible choices, and somehow still remain standing. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. So when someone tries to handle you like you're fragile, remind them you're not. When they try to shrink your world, expand it. When they try to silence your voice, speak louder. When they try to make you doubt yourself, stand taller. Because no matter how old you are, this is still your life. You don't need permission to dream. You don't need approval to act. You don't need supervision. You need support. And if someone can't tell the difference, they're not protecting you. They're trying to control you. And yes, sometimes that person is someone you love. A child, a spouse, a friend. And yes, it's painful to push back. But peace requires boundaries, even with the people you care for most. So if someone's always questioning your decisions, if you feel smaller around them, if your life feels more restricted than it should, ask yourself, is this love or is this fear in disguise? Because real love doesn't shrink you. It doesn't limit you. It doesn't hover over you, waiting to correct your every step. Real love walks beside you, not ahead of you. It trusts your judgment. It honors your voice. And if it doesn't, then it's not love. It's control. And you are not here to be controlled. You've earned your freedom. You've paid the price for your peace. Now, all that's left is to claim it. But there's one more kind of person who can quietly sabotage your growth. Not through guilt, not through need, not even through control. They do it simply by refusing to grow themselves. Let's talk about the ones stuck in the past and why your future can't afford to wait for them. Their world is small, their thinking rigid, and their hearts closed like windows that haven't been opened in years. And if you're not mindful, if you're not intentional, they will pull you into that same confined space, not out of cruelty, but out of comfort, because that's all they know. These are the people who talk endlessly about everyone else's problems, but never pause to reflect on their own. The ones who gossip with passion, but shut down when it's time to take accountability. They'll tell you what everyone else is doing wrong. They'll dissect lives that aren't theirs, but they'll never stop to ask, what do I need to work on? What pain have I refused to face? And that's the problem. That's why nothing ever changes. You see, some people aren't actually interested in growth. They're just interested in being right, in being heard, in staying safe inside their narrative, no matter how small it's become. But here's what life teaches you if you're paying attention. Growth does not stop when your hair turns gray. In fact, spiritual growth becomes more vital as you age. Because this chapter of life isn't just about reminiscing. It's not just about telling stories. It's about preparing your soul for peace, for depth, for clarity, and ultimately, for legacy. But here's the hard part. You can't walk into that freedom if you're still anchored to people who refuse to evolve. People who are still fighting over things that no longer matter. People who are still clinging to offenses like trophies, when in reality, they're weights. You've seen them before. The ones who bring up arguments from 20 years ago like they happened yesterday. The ones still blaming others for their bitterness. Still holding grudges with both hands. Still viewing the world through the lens of what was instead of what could be. And if you're not careful, they'll drag you into those same tired conversations, those same pointless debates, those same narrow mindsets that lead nowhere. But here's the truth. It is not your job to carry people who refuse to move. It is not your assignment to haul grown adults through the journey of self-awareness they refuse to take. Yes, you love them. Yes, you've known them for decades. Yes, there are memories. But shared history is not a reason to sacrifice your future. Let me say that again, because it matters. Just because you share a past with someone does not mean you owe them your peace going forward. And here's what will happen when you start growing. They'll say you've changed. And that's okay. In fact, that might be the greatest compliment you'll ever receive. Because if you're not changing, you're not growing. And if you're not growing, you're slowly dying. Not just physically, but spiritually, mentally, emotionally. But people who are stuck, they don't want you to grow. Your growth challenges their comfort. Your peace threatens their chaos. Your healing reminds them of everything they've avoided. And so instead of cheering for your transformation, they mock it. Instead of asking how you've become lighter, They accuse you of thinking you're better. Instead of following your lead, they try to pull you back into their loop. And that loop is dangerous. Because it's not just annoying, it's exhausting. And over time, it becomes a prison. You'll find yourself watering dead plants, waiting for conversations to finally evolve, begging for people to reflect, to release, to rise. But they won't. Why? Because some people are addicted to their own pain. They rehearse it like a script. They wear it like identity. They bond over wounds, but never step into healing. And if you stay too long in their world, you'll start to do the same. You'll start shrinking your joy just to make them comfortable. You'll start biting your tongue so they don't feel insecure. You'll start doubting your own clarity, your own faith, your own growth, just because it unsettles theirs. That's not compassion. That's compromise. And you've done enough of that. So what do? You let go with love. You bless them from a distance. You honor what once was, but you refuse to let it define what is. Because you are not here to drag the unwilling. You are not here to make people grow who have chosen to stay small. You are here to live, to lead, to evolve, to be light in a world that desperately needs it. And yes, it will hurt. It hurts to outgrow people you never thought you'd have to leave behind. It hurts to be the one who evolves while others stay still. But trust me, your peace is worth the ache. You deserve relationships that feel like sunlight. People who challenge you in love, not trap you in fear. People who say, let's grow together, not stay the same for me. People who see your change and say, I'm proud of you, not who do you think you are. And yes, that may mean your circle gets smaller. But a small circle full of truth and growth is worth more than a large one filled with noise and numbness. So if you're around people who are still bitter, still blaming, still cycling through the same emotional storms over and over again, don't let their chaos become your climate. Don't let their refusal to grow become the reason you stop expanding. Because you came this far not just to survive, but to flourish, to rest, to reflect, to pass on something deeper than old stories. You came to pass on wisdom, not recycled wounds. And you can't do that while dragging people who have no interest in healing. You can't find peace while surrounded by those addicted to drama. You can't walk in truth while holding hands with people who are terrified of their own reflection. Let them go, with grace, with compassion, with boundaries that are loving but firm. Because here's the hard truth. Some people aren't interested in becoming better. They're only interested in staying angry, staying offended, staying right. And if you're not careful, you'll spend your best remaining years trying to convince them to open a heart that was never yours to open. That's not your calling. Your calling is to be light, to live free, to keep growing. Surround yourself with people who ask questions, not just give opinions. People who reflect, not just react. People who seek truth, not just cling to comfort. And when you do, your life will feel light again. Your spirit will expand. You'll feel alive, not just breathing. Because growth creates room, and dead weight steals it. So yes, be kind. Yes, be loving, but also be clear. Your soul was not made to shrink. But there's one more kind of presence you must be mindful of. Not just because it limits your growth, but because it attacks your spirit. Let's talk about those who mock your faith and why in this sacred chapter, protecting your belief is more important than ever. There will come a time in your journey when your deepest strength is mistaken for weakness. When the very anchor that held you through life's fiercest storms gets laughed at by people who haven't even faced real waves. When what you know in your soul to be true is dismissed as a fairy tale by those too blind or too bitter to understand. And I'm not talking about people who believe differently. I'm talking about those who go out of their way to disrespect what you believe, who mock it, who roll their eyes when you speak about prayer, who treat faith as something foolish, outdated, or naive. These people don't simply disagree, they attack. They chip away at your peace with sarcasm. They sneer when you mention grace. They snicker when you speak of miracles. And here's what you need to remember. Faith is not fragility. Faith is fire. It's not weakness. It's the reason you're still standing. It's the thing that whispered, hold on, when everyone else walked away. It's what wrapped around your spirit like armor when life tried to break you apart. Faith is what carried you through nights soaked in tears. It's what kept your family from falling apart. It's what gave you strength when your body failed, when your heart ached, when your hope was hanging by a thread. Anyone who laughs at that, who scoffs at the source of your strength, is not someone who deserves a seat in your sacred space. Especially now, in this season of life, when every moment matters more, when your peace is no longer negotiable, when your purpose is too important to be debated. You see, as we age, the questions get deeper. We stop counting years and start measuring meaning. We begin thinking about eternity, about legacy, about what truly endures when all else fades. And in that reflective space, the voices you allow near your soul matter more than ever. Because you don't just need company anymore, you need alignment. You need people who may not walk your exact path, but who at the very least respect the ground you walk on. People who speak life, not mockery, who may not share your convictions, but honor them anyway. But there are some people so rooted in cynicism, so married to doubt, that they can't help but scoff at anything they don't understand. They'll say prayer is pointless. They'll say belief is blind. They'll say hope is weak. And slowly, if you let them, their noise will begin to drown out your stillness. Not because they're right, but because their voices are constant, loud, unrelenting, like static over the signal of your spirit. And that's how it begins, the erosion. You start to feel silly for praying out loud. You start hesitating before you speak about God. You start shrinking something sacred just to avoid being judged. Don't let it happen. Don't you dare let their sarcasm plant seeds of shame in your soul. Don't you let their smirks silence your reverence. Don't you let their doubt override your devotion. Because faith is not a fragile thing, it's a flame. And that flame has carried you through more than they'll ever understand. Faith held your heart when no one else knew how. Faith stood with you in the hospital rooms, in the graveyards, in the midnight cries. Faith is not a story someone told you. It's a truth you've lived. It's the reason you didn't quit. It's the reason you still believe in healing, in hope, in second chances. And if someone hasn't walked your valley, they don't get to laugh at your light. They don't get to dismiss your faith just because it makes them uncomfortable. Yes, some of these doubters might be close, a lifelong friend, a sibling, maybe even a child, someone you raised with love, but who now views belief as foolishness. You still love them. You always will. But love does not require tolerating spiritual disrespect. Let me say it again. Loving someone does not mean you have to let them dishonor what matters most to you. This isn't about arguing theology. This isn't about trying to convince anyone to believe what you believe. This is about protecting the soil of your soul, because that peace you carry right now, you fought for that. You bled for that. You wept for that. You don't owe anyone an explanation for what holds you together. You don't have to justify what gives you peace. You don't have to defend what kept you alive when nothing else could. You've heard God's whisper in your darkest nights. You felt His presence when the world was silent. You've seen His hand move when logic said it was impossible. And anyone, no matter how educated, accomplished, or enlightened, who tries to diminish that is not speaking from wisdom. They're speaking from wounds, from pride, from fear. So don't confuse intelligence with insight. Don't confuse confidence with conviction. And don't you dare confuse mockery with truth. Sometimes you have to love people from a distance. Yes, you can pray for them. Yes, you can wish them well, but you do not have to allow them to poison your peace with their sarcasm. You do not have to sit quietly while they chip away at your convictions. That is not love. That is spiritual warfare disguised as casual conversation. And let's be honest, it's not just what they say. It's the energy they bring. The smirks, the eye rolls, the jokes masked as just teasing. It's the subtle undermining of your strength. And it's not okay. You deserve to be surrounded by people who honor your journey. People who may not believe what you believe, but who respect it. People who listen without trying to poke holes. Who sit in reverence with you, not amusement. Because at the end of the day, none of us are staying here forever. We all leave this earth. And when that moment comes, what will matter won't be the opinions you debated, the arguments you won, or the clever things you said. What will matter is, did you live with peace? Did you love deeply? Did you believe with your whole heart? So when you lay your head down at night, let it be with peace, not because life is easy, but because your soul is anchored. Let it be because you refuse to let mockery steal your reverence, because you didn't shrink your faith for anyone, because you stood strong in what you know is real, even when others rolled their eyes. And if you ever need a reminder, let this be it. You do not need agreement from others to walk closely with God. You just need the courage to guard your faith like the treasure it is. Because this stage of life is not about arguing for your worth. It's about standing in it, not about defending your beliefs, but living them loudly, freely, without shame. And as you continue forward, let this truth be your shield. You don't need their validation. You only need your conviction. So here you are, not at the beginning, not quite at the end, but standing in one of the most sacred places life ever offers, the space between all that was and all that still can be. You've lived, you've given, you've forgiven more than you should have. You've stayed longer than was healthy. You've carried weight that wasn't yours to hold. And yet, you're still here, wiser, stronger, quieter, but more certain than ever. This chapter of your life isn't about proving anything to anyone. It's not about chasing what's already gone. It's not about fixing people who don't want to grow. It's about peace. It's about presence. It's about becoming whole, not by what you gain, but by what you release. Release the guilt. Release the users. Release the critics. Release the ones who tried to keep you small because they feared your light. You don't owe them your energy. You don't owe them your explanations. And you certainly don't owe them the best of what you have left. What you owe now is to your soul, to your spirit, to your joy, to the version of you that's been waiting patiently beneath the noise and pressure to finally rise. Because if this chapter is going to mean anything, let it mean freedom. Let it mean truth. Let it mean love, but not the kind you beg for, the kind that flows to you effortlessly because it sees you clearly, fully, and honors you deeply. Let it mean solitude, if that's where peace lives. Let it mean boundaries, if that's where healing begins. Let it mean less noise and more stillness, less drama and more depth, less pleasing and more presence. And most of all, let it mean faith. Faith in what got you here. Faith in who you've become. Faith in a God who never left your side, even when others did. You're not too late. You're not too broken. You're not too far behind. You are exactly where you need to be to live this next chapter on your terms. So if this message has stirred something in you, don't silence it. Don't stuff it back down. Don't rationalize the return to what's familiar but harmful. Instead, let it breathe. Let it rise. Let it guide you into a life that feels light on the outside, but anchored deep within. Because this is your time, not to prove, not to perform, but to be loved, to be whole, to be at peace. And when the world tries to pull you back into what you've outgrown, just remember, not everyone is meant to walk with you where you're going. Some were only meant to teach you where not to stay. So walk on with clarity, with courage, with your head high and your spirit free. Because after everything you've been through, you don't just deserve peace. You are peace. You've come too far to question your worth now. After everything you've weathered, every storm, every betrayal, every lonely night spent whispering prayers no one else could hear, do you really think your faith is something to be ashamed of? Or something you should shrink for the comfort of others? Absolutely not. This is your reminder. Your faith is your flame. And it's not your job to dim it, just so others don't feel the heat. Because there will always be people who misunderstand you, who can't comprehend how you still have peace when everything around you is falling apart, who can't explain why, even in your silence, your spirit is loud with strength. But you know why. You know who's been walking with you this entire time. It wasn't luck that carried you here. It wasn't coincidence that restored you. It was grace, unseen, unshakable, undeniable grace. And if someone needs scientific proof before they can respect your transformation, they're looking in the wrong place. Because miracles rarely come with statistics. They come in moments, in breakthroughs, in peace that surpasses understanding. And yes, your life may look quiet from the outside, but on the inside, you've been moving mountains. So don't explain your life. Don't justify your healing. Don't debate your transformation with people who are still defending their wounds. Instead, walk forward, stand tall, and protect your peace like it's sacred, because it is. You see, this chapter of your life isn't just about existing. It's about becoming. becoming who you were always meant to be before fear, judgment, and pain tried to edit your story. And you can't become that version of yourself while clinging to people who expect the old you to show up. Because the old you was polite in pain. The old you kept quiet to keep the peace. The old you tolerated disrespect in the name of love. But the new you, the rising you, that version sets boundaries. That version walks away without apology. That version speaks truth, even if your voice trembles. That version honors the calling more than the crowd. And here's the beauty. When you stop chasing validation, you become magnetic. You draw in the people who are praying for someone just like you. You find your true circle. Not the loudest ones, but the truest ones. The ones who don't just clap for your wins, but sit with you through your processing. The ones who see your faith and say that's powerful instead of that's foolish. So keep building, keep evolving, keep trusting. Because the life you're creating, the life rooted in faith, healed from pain, anchored in purpose, is the greatest resistance to a world that wants you broken. And listen, it's okay if your journey looks different. It's okay if people don't understand your quiet seasons. It's okay if they call you distant because you've chosen depth. Because when you stop performing and start becoming, your whole life shifts. And not everyone can come with you. But the ones who do, they'll see your growth. They'll honor your peace. They'll add to your joy, not drain it. So let this be your sign, your sacred permission to release what no longer aligns, to honor what you've survived, to trust where God is leading you next. And friend, if this message is resonating in your heart, if something in you knows this was written exactly for you, don't let it end here. Subscribe to this channel, because this space, it's for you. For those ready to rise, for those tired of hiding, for those who want truth spoken with love. Every week, we're diving deeper into what it means to heal, to grow, and to walk by faith when the world wants you to stay small. So hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and drop a comment below that says, I choose peace. Because the more we speak life, the more life begins to respond. You were never meant to stay in survival mode. You were created to thrive, to lead, to live with a quiet confidence that doesn't need applause to feel anchored. This is your time, not to please, not to prove, but to walk freely into the next chapter of your becoming. Let faith lead the way, and let every step you take from here echo with purpose. You are not alone. You are not behind. You are not done. You are chosen. You are seen. You are rising. And if no one else told you today, I'm proud of who you're becoming. Let's grow together. Welcome to a space where your spirit is safe, where your faith is honored, and where your voice matters. Subscribe, stay, speak, because the world needs your light.